Welcome to episode 2 of Free to Speak with Bobby and Paul. Once again, I'm Bobby, and this is Paul. We're bringing an American perspective and a Ugandan perspective to controversial topics. And last week, we kind of took a deep dive.
Yeah, we tried to explore wokeness, but of course, it wasn't as succinct as we wanted.
Yeah, but it's our first video. We're struggling a little bit.
From our video, we assumed that people would know what wokeness is, so we sort of dived in direct, and we implied the definition rather than giving it. So maybe for the interest of the few people who probably want to follow but are not clearly understanding what wokeness is, then that's the first thing we shall do today. We shall try to explain and, retrospectively bring things into perspective for some people.
Basically, what it means to be woke, on paper, is to be aware of issues of social injustice and actively involved in addressing them and in confronting them. And Paul, we don't have any objections to that. We agree with that, right?
Yeah, essentially we pro wokeness in that, but if we are to follow the academic description of what it is. Yeah, we are pro it, but then we felt we need to talk about what it has become, because there's what it has become and what it is. They are different things, and what it has become is what it shouldn't be. I'm good at giving examples. In Uganda, we have tribes, and they're tribes that are assumed to be, in a privileged position, and then others are being mistreated by the other tribes in power. But this is not now. It has always been. Even in 50 years ago, there was another tribe in power and people thought the same. So, but it's not the entire tribe which is a problem. So sometimes it's just a particular few people. This is what happens. We're having a small substrata of a particular group, and we're stereotyping everyone from that group, and we're judging them, and then we're attacking the wrong people. Because essentially the people who are actually having the power to oppress, you can't approach them. They're untouchable. Then in the end, you find yourself attacking innocents who have nothing to say in how things are moving. There might be a strong white person who is racist and all, but they're strong. You can't do anything about it apart from shouting, maybe on social media. But you'll find yourself mistreating another white man who is on the low end of things, and they're not subscribing to those things, but then you find yourself stereotyping them, and it's unfair for that person.
To give you an example, perhaps from my own life, my wife is Ugandan, and what's happening is that people are attacking her because she married a white man. And there's this idea, look at the history of what white people have done in Africa. Look at colonialism. Look at all of these injustices. And I acknowledge that these injustices have taken place. I acknowledge colonialism happened, and it was evil, and it was harmful to Africa, and it caused a lot of suffering and a lot of pain, and it created this legacy of hardship that exists to this day in much of Africa and in Uganda. But to come and attack us as an individual, we were attacked by one particular individual that was so bad that even TikTok caught it and flagged it as being unwanted harassment. And this guy's basically saying, because he's a white man, look at what these white people have done in Africa. He's using you. He's going to hurt you in the long run. He's going to harm you in the long run. Because that's what white people are. That's what white people do. And this is the kind of mentality that we are concerned about. When you start talking about things like white supremacy culture, the entire white culture is supremacist in nature. And so what we're talking about is the extremes within wokeness.
We're not saying that we don't acknowledge the injustice has happened, especially historically. There's been that injustice for a while, and it's not like it's not there now. So how do you approach a white man who is supporting the blacks? Is it fair for that man to be looked at as a racist just because of his skin color? Yeah, I also have a problem with calling them white because, my shirt is white as you can see, and Bob is not like this. So anyway, that's another thing. So what I'm saying is, we've come from so far, and there have been achievements done in these waves of emancipation, in these waves of fighting for rights and all, and we've achieved some things. But then to demonize someone based on a stereotype, it's unfair. The Western people came and colonized, and there was slave trade in Uganda, but it wasn't Bob. So why would I have to look at Bob differently because people in his past have done things to us? I've worked in a refugee settlement where we have two different tribes. They have a historic fight between them that's happened for years. But we have kids being groomed to hate each other. But they don't even know why, but they just hate each other. So basically like Israel-Palestinian thing. Is it necessary?
So there's kind of another thought that's popped into my head here. My mind's jumping all over the place here. I don't know if you were done with the Palestinian.
It's okay.
Yeah. So I've said in the past, and I said in the last video, that I'm a recent retiree. I used to work at a university, and I used to work with science, math, engineering, and technology education projects. We would ask questions on surveys. So when we're evaluating the effectiveness of programs and education programs and so forth, specifically related to these STEM areas, we would always ask these demographic questions. Gender identity, it eventually started out as gender and then gender identity. And so over time we kind of evolved in how the questions were asked. But there was also race, ethnicity. And a few years ago, maybe several years ago, the term Latinx started to appear. Because before it was Latino, Latina, it was Latina/O. But then eventually somebody said, well, we want to make this gender inclusive to include non-binary characteristics, so it became Latinx. The only problem is the Latin community, when we actually gave the survey, were offended by that because they did not like the term Latinx, and they felt that it was a term that was being imposed on them by white people. And this is the kind of comments that we actually heard. And so there was even one project that finally came back and told us, please don't put Latinx on the survey anymore. It was one of those projects where they're trying to recruit underrepresented minorities, where they're specifically trying to recruit Latin Americans. The people that they were recruiting were offended by the term Latinx, again, because they felt that it was a term that was being imposed on them that they didn't want to be labeled as.
We're in a free world, so someone can feel the way they feel, can think the way they think, but the problem is trying to impose your own ideals on someone. Yeah. So if it's a free world, then I should be free to identify the way I identify.
You can identify as you want to identify. We're not objecting to that.
Yeah. So, but then you don't have to impose it on me. I have to have the freedom of not recognizing whatever you want me to recognize.
It's just in the same way. If I have a certain political view, if I have a certain religious view, you don't have to recognize it. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You can hate it.
Exactly.
And you have a right to hate it.
It's not right that some people have the moral authority to impose their beliefs on others. When last elections of the US, one of the candidates posted after the Black Lives Matter was like, if you vote for Trump, then you're not black. Come on.
It was Joe Biden.
Like, who does that?
Yeah.
Like, if I vote for Trump, I can still be black. I won't turn white.
If Donald Trump had said, if you don't vote for Trump, you're not black,
it would be a different story.
Imagine the backlash that
I know.
And that is the hypocrisy that we are confronting. This is one of the reasons why woke has become a pejorative, and it's become an insult in the United States. So conservatives are criticizing it. People in the center, like Elon Musk, are criticizing it. People also on the left, the liberals, like Bill Maher, are also coming out now and are criticizing wokeness.
So basically, if you're a woke person, then you want to engage in dialogue. But then many of them, they avoid dialogue. They just throw emotions and tantrums, but they avoid dialogue. So you face the dialogue. If you feel like whatever you are subscribing to is helpful to society, then engage the dialogue. Whatever you're feeling, I may not agree to it, and I don't want to demonize you for that. Why would you demonize me for thinking otherwise?
We're also woke. So we're speaking as people who want to be woke in the classic sense of what wokeness is, but we're concerned about the abuses of wokeness. We had a comment from one person who said that I don't see anything but light when I come across a woke person. Okay.
In essence, we are the light because we are woke. So they were right in that.
Right. They were right. So it kind of implies that they disagree with us on something, but they won't tell us what it is they disagree with us So how do we respond to this? Tell us specifically what it is in our video that you disagree with or that you object to or that you have concerns about. We had another comment, and this comment actually came from a friend of mine. We know each other very well. We've known each other for years. We're very good friends. But he says, "My man, I wish I knew what happened to your thought processes. You have changed and it's very bizarre." and I don't think he means like the bizarre to be insulting. It's like I said, this is a friend. So he's maybe a little surprised at some of the things that I'm saying.
You could find that he finds it bizarre because he has never got your clear mind on this kind of issues, and that is also a reason. That's also we could use that as a premise to understand how things are out there. People aren't authentic. Why? Because they're being threatened when they're authentic. So we say freedom of speech, but then people can't speak about some topics, and so you stay with people who you don't know. Someone might be a racist, but then you'll never see it, but then they are until they surprise you. Yeah? So someone might be woke, might be woke, but you never know that they are woke until you actually woke. So we want to create a space where people are free to be themselves, to reduce this kind of oddities where if a long-term friend will be surprised at what comes out of you, That's the kind of free space we're advocating for, that people can be able to speak and be themselves.
And then we had another comment I wanted to respond to too. And I think this was actually a pretty insightful comment. You spoke about freedom as a topic for the future. I find that freedom is only free when it has boundaries. Freedom isn't living without rules in doing whatever I want, but freedom is best when there are reasonable rules to follow. For example, the rules for traffic benefit all of us and allow us to use our vehicles safely within a set of rules. The concept of freedom within boundaries applies to all areas of life such as speech, parenting, marriage, education, healthcare, labor, etc. On an ideal level, I don't disagree with this person. I do believe in freedom within boundaries. For example, with traffic, you have to have rules. You go around in Uganda here, you go into Kampala where the traffic is just kind of crazy and insane. You've got to have some rules that govern the insane amount of traffic that comes into traffic circles and that's on the streets there. So you've got to have rules that benefit all. And the traffic laws are not going to be written to bias a person with a political view or religious view. But the reason that boundaries for speech don't work in the same way is because oftentimes it's the people in power who get to determine the rules for speech. How would it be if suddenly now, like there's the whole counter-woke revolution that's taking place in America right now? What if that gains traction 10, 20 years from now, suddenly they're in power and now they're doing to you what you did to them, and the cycle continues. So you feel like you've been oppressed in the past, so now you're oppressing the people that you thought oppressed you, even though some of the people you're oppressing are innocent and didn't oppress you. And so now what that's doing is creating a backlash of people who are feeling oppressed and silenced. Now they're rising up with a counter-woke revolution. And when they gain power, they're going to oppress you. When does the cycle stop?
That's what we're trying to do. The cycle should stop now. If we have the freedom to speak like right now, and we're not banned, we're not cautioned, we're not, we don't face negative ramifications for being ourselves, then maybe we are creating that world, the ideal world where people can actually be one. Because I believe whatever wing I subscribe to, I'm okay. I have the freedom to subscribe wherever I subscribe, and that's okay. Yeah, we're essentially the original woke right now, and whatever is going on is pernicious to woke culture. I'll use the Ugandan perspective. So like I said earlier, we've had, my country has tribes. I don't know about some countries out there, it's just one unit, but we have tribes here. Over 60-something tribes. And oftentimes when a president comes from one particular tribe, other tribes feel like they are oppressing them. And, well, whether that may be the case or not is another thing. But usually the opposition uses the tribal lines to campaign, and that's not right. Because not everyone from that tribe is responsible for whatever the person in power is doing. It's their problem. If Paul is in power and Paul comes from a particular group of people and is oppressing you, that's Paul's problem. That is not the problem of an entire race where Paul comes from. So attack Paul, and you're right to attack Paul. Demonize Paul because yes, he has done something bad, yeah, and you're being objective. But then it's not right for you to attack the whole race where Paul comes. You know, it's not right. So that I believe, yes, wokeness is right and it's good to stand up for injustice, but then you want to stand up for injustice to the right people. If someone from my family kills another, you can't arrest my whole family. You will have to get that person and then take them to the jury and etc. You don't sue the whole family and arrest everyone. Where does personal responsibility come in? So yes, some of these things have happened, and let's hold accountable the people who we should be holding accountable. Let's not punish other people just because they're from the same race or they're from the same culture or the same skin color. It's unfair.
So, all right. So we'll see you next week. Probably in another week again with another video.
Yeah. Mwebale nnyo.
So say that again.
Mwebale nnyo.
And that means?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.